part of the Scorch Raffle Bot tutorial. In this video, I will explain how to create tasks for Google Form raffles. I will start with explaining the tasks page in the Raffle Bot. The first part is the login select. If the Google Form requires a login, you can select a login pool here that you would like to use. I will explain later what a login pool is. If your Google Form doesn't require a login, you can just select no login. If you don't know if your Google Form requires a login, one way to check is to copy the raffle link and paste it into an incognito browser. If the form requires a login, then a login page will appear when you visit the link. After we have selected a login pool or no login, we then paste the raffle link in the URL input. Note that for Google Forms, you need to add the submission URL, which will include the text form response. Then we move on to profiles and profile switch. Here's where you select how many times you want the raffle bot to run and the profiles to use simultaneously. Here in the profiles input is where you select which profiles you want to use. You select the profiles by their index. Let's say, for example, you enter 1 to 5. This means you would use your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth profile. The profile switch is how many times you would like to use each profile. So let's say here you enter the number 2. This means that it will use each profile twice from 1 to 5, meaning you will use the first profile twice, the second profile twice, and so on. In this scenario, the task would run 10 times. You then select your proxies. This works in the exact same way as the profiles, except the count, in this case 10, has to be the same. So your proxies could be 1 to 10 with a 1 switch. It doesn't have to be the exact same like 1 to 5. As long as the count is the same, it doesn't matter. If you would not like to use a proxy, then you simply enter localhost into the proxies input. And you will use your localhost IP for each submission. Note that now the proxy switch doesn't matter as you used localhost, so you just enter whatever here. In the delays input is where you enter the delay you want between each raffle submission. You enter in a range you would like the delay to be. Let's say we enter in 30 to 50. That means that between each submission, the bot will select a random number between 30 to 50 before it submits an entry. It is done like this to decrease suspicion. If the raffle owners saw 100 entries exactly 30 seconds apart from each other, they would know something's up. In the final input, we select if the raffle contains a captcha or not. One way to tell if a captcha is required is if in the form body, the input section, there is a G captcha response input. Somewhere here. If it does, then we select the reCAPTCHA section and input the CAPTCHA's API key. Usually the raffle extension will pick up the API key for you, but if it doesn't, you can usually find it in the request history or in the HTML by typing Command F and searching for site key. The final part is adding our inputs. Here's where we add our personal data that we will be submitting. In Google Forms, there are two parts to an input, the input ID and the input data. If we look in our form response and scroll down to the request body, we see our submitted personal data. The first part, before the colon, is the input ID, and the part after is our input data. If we have inputs saved from the Raffle extension, we can import them here. So the inputs, export them and import them into the app. Or we can add them manually, looking at our form response body. When adding our input, we see that the input ID will usually be entry.somenumbers, and the second half will be the data you entered. The input ID stays the same for each entry, so we just enter in the text into the input and it will stay consistent throughout the whole task, or constant. The second half may be something like your address, or some other profile data. If we would like this data to change with our profiles, we need to use variables. Variables are exactly what they sound like. In the input data section, if you would like to enter in your profile address here, then you would like to declare the variable by using these curly braces. Then inside, entering your variable. In this instance, we want our profile address, so we enter in the variable address. The address variable will combine your profile's house number and street name together. We made these two separate for more customability. In the future, we will add a pop-up that shows up all the possible variables you can use when you declare a variable. But for now, just use the label texts in the profiles page to see which variables you can create. The other non-profile variables we can use is our pool data. Depending on which pool we want to use, we first have to declare the pool. So we can start with either email pool, login pool, or custom pool. We then add a dot and add the name of the pool that we would like to use. So let's say we have a custom pool called custom test. We would enter in the variable custom pool dot custom test. This variable will use each line of data in the pool once. Therefore, we have to make sure that the custom test pool length is the exact same as our test length, which is 10. If we only have 5 in the custom test pool, we can go into the pool, edit it, and duplicate each line so that we have 10 lines of data to use. The same concept applies for the email and login pool, but you will notice that each line of data has sections and is separated with colons. So if we enter in the variable email pool, dot first email pool, the task will submit the entire line of data with the colon, meaning it will submit username, password, and recovery email with the colons like so. Email If we would like to enter in only one part of this pool, we simply add on which section we would like to use at the end of the variable with a dot. If we want email, we would enter in .email. If we want password, we would enter in .password. If we would want the recovery email, we would enter in .recovery. This works the exact same way for login pool, except we use .username and .password at the end. You can also combine plain text with variables, so you can have constant text submitted along with changing text. Let's say you need to enter in the text name and colon, followed by your name like so. Name, John. In this case, we would simply enter in the name in the colon text, and then add our first name variable like so. Name, first name. This will enter in name and colon each time, but switch your first name with your profile, which is dependent on your profiles and profile switch that you set. Profiles and proxies are pretty self-explanatory, so I will skip those for the video. You can look at our documentation if you are unsure about them. Here at our pools page is where we create the email, login, and custom pools I mentioned in the tasks page. The email pool is usually used in the emails task page as switching between the sender email. You simply just add the variable there and it will take care of the rest. In fact, it expects you to just enter in the curly braces with the email pool dot your email pool name. The login pool is usually used in the task creation page and is selected at the top as the login to use if a login is required to enter a raffle. The custom pool is used as variables and inputs if you have a list of data you need to enter into a raffle. This can be used for anything you can think of, even adding a list of emails and the same ones with a dot and number trick added onto them, and used in an input that requires an email. Moving on to the settings page. Here's where you can add your Discord webhook and your 2-CAPTCHA key for solving CAPTCHAs. If a raffle has a reCAPTCHA, you must first save a 2-CAPTCHA key here, then create a task with the specific CAPTCHA's API key. This is the basic essentials for running the Raffle Bot. There will be more specific videos coming in the future once we collect more user feedback and add on new features. Thank you for watching.